Hey everyone, it's Alex Ball, back with another episode of the No-Till Market Garden Podcast. On today's interview, I sit down with Noah Scalero of Beetroot Farm in Southern Illinois. We dig deep on developing a new farm business and property, farming in a hot and humid environment, and educating beginning farmers through mentorships. So without any further ado, let's get to the interview with Noah Scalero of Beetroot Farm.
Today's episode of the No-Till Market Garden Podcast is brought to you by Farmhand. I don't know about you, but I got into farming to grow food, not spend my time creating pack lists, writing newsletters, responding to emails, or maintaining web stores. If I could spend less time on my phone and computer and more time farming, that would be a win. Enter Farmhand. Farmhand is the only all-in-one virtual assistant built by and for CSA farmers. It takes care of the admin, managing orders, customer communications, and automating tedious tasks so you can get back to doing what you love. On average, Farmhand saves CSA farmers 6 hours a week. That's 6 hours you could spend with your family, out in the field, or simply taking a breather. So, what would you do with an extra 6 hours? Now's the time to get your systems ready for next season. Learn how Farmhand can help at farmhand.partners/no-till. Today's episode is also brought to you by ASAP, Appalachian Sustainable Agriculture Project. ASAP, Appalachian Sustainable Agriculture Project, will offer the Business of Farming Conference on Saturday, February 22nd in Asheville, North Carolina. This annual conference brings together professional and aspiring farmers from across the Southeast to network and share resources to build viable farm businesses. Scholarships for BIPOC and limited resource farmers are available, as well as discounts for farm partners registering together. Registration opens in mid-November. Find out more at asapconnections.org. That's ASAPconnections.org. All right, enjoy the show.
Noah, I'm so excited to have you on the show today from Beetroot Farm. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to talk with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, thank you. So you're located in Carbondale, Illinois. Where is that located in the state? Is it northern and southern?
Yeah, so that's the very southern tip of the state, right where the two rivers converge. And for those of you who haven't been to Illinois, it may be not what you think of as Illinois. So like 10 miles to the north of me, it's typical corn and soy. And then 10 miles to the south, it's these sandstone bluffs and it's rolling hills. And it's a little more reminiscent of like Appalachia almost. And that's because the glaciers actually ended just about where Carbondale is. So you have two very different biomes very close together.
Oh, that's super interesting. Okay, and since you're so far south, is your weather there a little warmer than compared to the northern area of the state? What's the climate kind of like?
Yeah, so we're zone 7A. So our summers are very humid and hot. And then we do get, we get a winter. We usually get about 2 weeks of pretty cold. We might get some ice or snow, but then in general, it's a little bit more mild. So our days might be high 30s, low 40s, and nights below freezing, but nothing too crazy. So
okay, so
mild.
With that little milder winter season, are you able to push year-round production? Do you grow food in the off season, or is it predominantly in the heat of the summer?
Yeah, so we focused mostly on traditional summer growing. However, so we're just getting into our third year of production here. And this winter, we're starting to experiment with a little bit of production in the tunnels, but we haven't pushed it too hard yet. But we have plans for the future.
And you're saying now you've been there for 3 years, but I'm not mistaken, you've been farming for quite a lot longer before that.
Yeah. So I've been farming. Gosh, this might be year 7 or 8 now. Started out just working summers for some local producers down here while I was in college at Southern Illinois University. And then actually kind of took a little bit of a hiatus from farming and was an environmental planner for a brief stint. But that was actually 2020. And so a lot of those projects got put on hold. And I remember I was like sitting in the office and there's no windows in there, not really a lot to work on. And I was like, gosh, is this like my next 30 years? And it was kind of at that point where I was like, I wonder, I loved being out on other people's farms and working out there, but I was like, can this be a career? And I think I just got bored enough of sitting in the office that I was like, I'm going to make a go of this. So I worked on farms for another couple of years full time after that, and then started in 2022.
Okay, nice. And were all those farms vegetable farms?
Yeah, all vegetable, pretty much all organic or kind of organic and everything but name. And then actually, so I worked at local farms down here through 2021. And then I went up to Frith Farm in Maine, which some of your viewers might know, and worked under Daniel Mays. I kind of sought him out because I couldn't find a farm down here doing no-till production, and I was interested in that. And I was interested in no-till cover cropping especially. And then I also kind of felt like I didn't know, I knew how to do certain farm tasks, but I didn't know the why, right? Like I didn't know, why is this farmer choosing to plant this bed of carrots at this time? Or how is he choosing or she choosing how much to grow? How do they know how much they can sell? So I kind of felt like there was a why missing for me. And Daniel's program really like kind of fosters, like he gives you a view into the back end of the business. So I spent that time writing a business plan and bouncing ideas off of him and talking to other apprentices and other farmers in the region, and kind of like building up a little bit of that business literacy before starting. So,
man, that's so important and really impressive to hear, because how many of us just like had an idea, jumped full into it, and were drowning immediately? It sounds like you really went out there and found the exact information you needed, and the places where you were lacking to try and fill that gap to make yourself a little more rounded before you started a farm business.
Yeah, and I think the way I said that made it sound like that was super intentional. I think part of it was maybe I was just a little nervous too to like make the jump, and I was like, well, this seems like another good way to build a little bit more some skills and some knowledge base. So it ended up working out really well. I don't know if I would have been successful without that experience, frankly, because I do as I started the farm, I realized there was still a lot of knowledge gaps. So yeah, really grateful for that experience, and I learned a lot, and definitely set me up really well. And there's something to having a farm mentor too that you can call up when you have a question, who can just be like, oh yeah, like this is how I would approach that. I think that's pretty invaluable. So yeah, it's been great.
Oh yeah, totally having somebody you can lean on who's just been around a little longer, who knows what's going on. It just makes it so much easier.
Yeah, it's amazing how many things pop up that you've like never had experience with when you're starting a farm, like electrical or like burying water lines, or like how do I hook up this cool bot, or like there's all these things where it's really helpful to have somebody kind of in your corner who's been there before.
Totally. So you were saying earlier that one big part of your farm you wanted to focus on was the cover cropping. So what scale is your current farm at, and how much of that space are you in active cropping to cover cropping, and how do you balance that?
Yeah, sure. So my whole property here is 14 acres, and it's all pretty much open. There's very few trees on it. It's got a 3/4 of an acre pond on there. We're only currently growing on about 1 to 2 acres of permanent bed production. Kind of depends how you count it, and it depends if you count some of the perennials we've put in. We do everything in standardized plots. So we do 15 beds per plot, and that's 60 feet wide by 100 feet long. And so those are 100-foot beds, 30-inch bed width. And the reason we did that is for a few reasons. We do 2 Farmer's Friend 30-foot tarps, can then like tarp a whole plot. So that's pretty handy. And we're doing all those on like pallets with a layer of cinder blocks, and then we can move them around with the pallet forks. Just makes it really efficient. And then we also have wobblers on the whole farm, and those are permanent because we're not tilling, so we can leave those lines in. And that spacing just works out really nicely for the Excel wobblers. So,
And are you irrigating off a well, off that pond? How are you doing that?
Yeah, so we had to drill a 220-foot well on the property, which was a pretty penny. But yeah, it's been great. So we have enough water supply for the wash pack and for as much as we want to irrigate, really, and for the cabin that I built out here too. So.
Oh, cool. Then So do you live on site, or just another property?
No, yeah, I live on site. So it was actually kind of funny. I moved back from Maine and, didn't have a car at the time, didn't have any housing situation, but I had a lot of friends that I could crash on their couch. But I pitched a tent out here. I didn't have a mower. It was like waist tall broom sedge grass. So I like stomped out a spot for my tent and got to work. I actually dug out the driveway by hand with a shovel and started building a little cabin and really tried to bootstrap it. But yeah, I now live out here in a little 20 by 12 tiny house. And I have plans to build a bigger house if I ever make some money farming. So.
No, I love that. You know the land from the ground up, from the tent, the tiny house. And I love hearing that story because I did a very similar thing at my first farm. And there's something about being connected on the land and just being there 24/7. That, like just kind of like the baby nature of it, right? Just nurturing that land, getting it rolling.
Absolutely. And like in the spring, I don't think I would sleep very well if I was off farm because I'm just constantly going out there and making sure the heater's working and checking the greenhouse. And yeah, it's nice to be on farm and be able to check on things. And yeah, I like being able to go out at dinner time and go grab some food. And yeah, there's something about living and being out here that's really fulfilling. So.
And that's fantastic. And do you have anybody else who helps you on the farm, or is it mainly you or the labor for it?
Yeah. So in the first year, I actually had two friends that started their own business, and they wanted to grow watermelons. And I had a bunch of extra space, so we did a little bit of a work trade where I gave them space to grow, and they helped me out a couple hours a week, which was great. And then actually, also that year, I had somebody who found me on the internet and was wanting to volunteer. And her name's Sam, and she's turned out to be a wonderful coworker, and now she's an employee. She's actually going to be managing our CSA program for next year. So she's turned into like a very integral part of the farm, and she brings a lot of skills that I don't have to the team, which has been awesome. Really helps balance my skill set out. And we're actually bringing on a second person part-time for this year as well. So we'll be a team of 3.
Wow, congratulations. That's great. So you're saying that if 3 folks out there, where is the farm located, like as far as close proximity to like markets and to nearest areas? Are you in a deeply rural space, or are you close to a major metro?
Yeah, so we're actually pretty close to Carbondale, which is roughly a 30,000 person town, but it expands pretty dramatically when school's in session because there's a university located in Carbondale. So we can find a lot of like student workers. There's a lot of folks associated with the university that are kind of, a little more like-minded and are interested in this type of agriculture. So it's actually been a great location for us. We do on-farm CSA pickup every week, and we have no problem getting folks to come out to the farm and pick up. So we're kind of at that nice balance between being close to town, but also being a little bit rural as well.
Man, that's perfect. Yeah, right on the edge. You can take advantage of both those, the best of both the worlds. Fantastic. And is Carbondale your main area you sell into, or is there a larger metro that you're moving your product to?
Yeah, I would say Carbondale is our main location. We're really lucky to have one of the best farmers markets south of Champaign located in Carbondale. So for being such a small town, it's got like a really vibrant culture around local food. So I would say the farmers market is roughly 50% of our sales. 25% of our sales is our CSA program, roughly. We're expanding that this year. And then the other 25 is we sell to some local restaurants, like a co-op grocery store, and that kind of like more wholesale account. We're also planning on expanding into a local cooperative based in Southern Illinois called LEAF, which is the Little Egypt Alliance of Farmers, I believe. And that's a group of growers that tries to access like bigger markets together and also sells on an online platform. So I'm curious to see, how that will fit into our current business outlets, but really excited to join that group of farmers.
Oh, cool. I want to hear a little more about Leaf. So you're saying it's an online platform, and then do they some aggregation to access local markets? Is that selling direct to consumer? Is that wholesale to grocery store? How does that aggregate?
So as I understand it, currently it's primarily sold through their online platform direct to consumer. So they have one full-time staff member and then a lot of volunteers, from the farmers that are part of the cooperative that help with pack and distribution. But yeah, mostly to consumers right now, although they have started to get into some bigger outlets like schools, like food banks, and different outlets like that. And I think if they can get enough volume, enough production, I think that's where they'd like to go, is to access some bigger wholesale accounts that, like a single farmer wouldn't be able to reliably supply. So
Made sense. Well, that's not a great opportunity for you to get involved with that.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool too. I mean, they tend to share resources amongst farmers in kind of a more impromptu way. But yeah, I think there's something about, this can be an isolating profession a little bit, and it's really cool. I like the idea of working with other farmers and collaborating as much as possible. Because I think the pie expands as more of us get involved. I really don't think we're competing. I think we're collaborators more so.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like the puzzle is more finding places to like move product to instead of like dominating where the product goes to. Like anytime you can anytime I know of an account, like if I can't supply it, I find somebody else locally who can supply it, help with them, and then it helps grow the whole market, I feel like, every time.
Totally. And I actually do that on a micro scale. So I worked for a farmer who's he currently sells at the same farmer's market I'm at. And his kind of niche is like he grows really good carrots and nobody else at the market does. He sells a lot of other things too. But I grow carrots as well. And I think at first, we were worried that we'd be kind of stealing sales from each other. But we've both realized, he says he sold more carrots than he ever has before since I've been at the market. And I'm selling a bunch too. So like the pie's kind of grown and I send people his way if I'm out and he sends people my way if he's out. So it's kind of turned into like this cool thing where we're growing a market and more people are consuming the product. So
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, we're all lifting all the boats at once, right? Yeah, we're together
exactly.
for it.
Yep.
So at that market, is that a grower only market? You're saying it's a pretty large farmers market. Is quite a few vendors there?
Yeah, quite a few vendors. It's primarily growers only. There are some arts and crafts too, but there's a lot of produce vendors. We have a really strong like humane animal husbandry scene here. So there's a lot of like regeneratively minded animal producers locally. And then we've got like some Amish baked goods and coffee vendors and things like that. So
Nice. And you were saying that about a quarter of your sales are going towards that CSA program. Is that, as you said, it's a pickup on farm? Is that a traditional bots program? Is it a flexible bots program? How do you envision and how do you interpret CSA for your local community?
yeah, so I kind of modeled it after how Frith Farm in Maine did their CSA program. We do it's free choice CSA. So we kind of set it up farmers market style. And folks get to pick if they're a half share 5 items to go in their box, or if they're a full share, they get to pick any 10. We also have free herbs and flowers included. Pick your own though. So that's been like a really big hit. Moms will come out with their kids and go pick a bouquet of flowers or grab some basil for pesto or whatever. And it kind of just gets folks out on the farm and interacting with like their food and kind of, being in a space. We want to foster some community and relationships here through the CSA. We have some plans too. We don't have any infrastructure yet, but once we have like a barn space and a little bit more of a host space, we'd love to throw some farm to table dinners and have the CSA out for some kind of fun community building events.
Totally getting folks more involved with the space. And I love that marketing idea of having the free herbs and flowers. I love that.
And it just makes the farm beautiful. So I'm not complaining.
Yeah, exactly. That helps quite a bit. Do you offer in delivery for your CSA or is it mainly pick up on farm?
Yeah, we only do on farm and we're not packing any boxes or anything. So that really kind of reduces the labor of having the CSA. And we've gotten really great feedback from customers as well. Because, some people might not want kale every week, or maybe they want, 5 items worth of tomatoes because they're going to make a bunch of salsa or whatever. I think they like having that flexibility. Yeah, we really want people to come on farm. And I guess a little bit more about the CSA. That was really like an important part as we started to like cash flow the business and to really have like that core group of people that was like really supporting us and like kind of believed in our mission. And as we've grown and expanded into other markets, like that's become a little bit of a smaller portion. But yeah, it's just kind of, it feels like that's our core group. Like those are our cheerleaders in the community. Those are the people like advertising and marketing for us. And yeah, it's just been cool to see that grow and that community grow. So
yeah, and you said earlier, you're so close to town. It sounds like a really opportunity to get folks just out of their normal space on the farm, but not having to drive an hour out of town to go enjoy that.
Yeah, I'd say our average like travel from for folks is like 10 minutes or less. And they can come to like a beautiful space where they get to hang out as long as they want. And yeah, just kind of feel like they're part of it. Like feel like it's their space too.
Cool. And I don't know if I asked this earlier, but do you do any type of other on-farm sales besides the CSA farm stands, anything like that?
No, we've considered putting up, so we don't have any real permanent infrastructure. Once we build a barn though, I'd like to have part of that space air conditioned and have like kind of like a farm store / CSA pickup location. We've had a lot of other producers reach out to us to see if they could add like, their product line to our CSA as an add-on. And so once we have that kind of space, I'd love to be able to do that and also have a little bit of a farm store. But currently, that's our only on-farm sales outlet.
Okay, cool. Well, it sounds like you have a lot of plans for your space coming up.
Yeah, maybe too many.
No, that's good. You got to have like 9 ideas, and then like one will be like your bright and shine, and they'll go on.
Yes. Yep.
So you mentioned a little earlier about you're good at growing carrots. There's other vendors too. But in the CSA, what are some of the main items you think that you're doing really well, that you really have to grow? And you said, is there anything else you're buying in as well to fill out that CSA? Is it all on farm produced items?
Yeah, we're producing everything for the CSA on farm. We try to have at least 15 options every week for folks to pick from. But some of those options might be like, an Italian frying pepper versus a bell pepper or something. But yeah, we're doing like the traditional spread of market garden products. We do heirloom tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, eggplant. We do a lot of greens as well. I think that's probably our main moneymaker. So we do a lot of mixed greens, spinach, arugulas, mustard greens, kale, chard, collards, all those. And there's a kind of a balance too with the CSA because we want to provide, a little bit more variation. So we're doing things that maybe aren't profitable, like sweet potatoes. And we do this beautiful mix of Adirondack Blue, Norland Red, and Yukon Gold potatoes that folks go crazy for. We might be losing a little bit of money on them, but we think it's kind of part of providing a more full diet. So we like having them on the farm.
Yeah, totally. And sometimes just having nice, beautiful things, like everything doesn't have to always be like the most profitable every time. You can have things you just like to do and look nice and pull people in.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I think there's like a good balance to be had, like not always having dollar signs in your eyes, but thinking about it enough where the farm can, maintain itself and be profitable long term.
Yeah, totally. And you're saying doing a lot of greens, specialize in those. Is that predominantly what you're selling wholesale to the restaurants and grocery?
Yeah. We sell a lot of lettuce mix and arugula to local restaurants here. And mostly bagged greens to local grocery stores as well. We do some other stuff, like we'll sell a lot of cherry tomatoes. We sell some bulk carrots, but I would say primarily it's our greens, and that's similarly what we're known for at our farmers market as well. We get customers in for our greens, and then they'll add on other products. But it seems like that's kind of that was our entryway into the market for sure.
And yeah, we'll backtrack to the market situation since you brought that up. At the market, is it more of a classic farmers market with a lot of truck farms, potatoes, onions, carrots, stuff like that? Or are there a lot of market garden style farms who are producing greens and, micro carrots and, tomatoes, stuff like that?
No, yeah, I would say it's primarily larger vegetable farms, mostly conventional. There's really just me and then one other farm who I worked for, who's kind of more market garden scale. There are a lot of other market gardens in the region, but a lot of them don't. They haven't either gotten into this market or they don't sell at this market. But they have other outlets in the area where they're focused.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I feel like having that little niche of being the greens person can really get you into market.
Totally. Yep.
So since you've been there over the last, is it 3 years now?
Yeah, so we just wrapped up our second season heading into our third.
Okay, yeah. So it sounds like you've developed quite a bit your business has developed quite a bit in that short amount of time. Yeah.
We started out, we kind of aimed to be in like the $30,000 to $40,000 of produce the first year, and we were just about there. We've been just trying to kind of slowly add in a sustainable way with, labor's been a little tricky, especially come August. Things seem to get away from us a little bit. So trying to find that balance of like not growing too fast and kind of doing what we do well before expanding. But the goal here is to provide living wages for the employees I've got and hopefully be able to pay myself someday and only do this job. So.
Yeah. It's the dream, right? We're all working towards it.
Yeah.
Today's episode of the No-Till Market Garden Podcast is brought to you by Ohio Earth Food. If you grow plants, you know that to a farm of any size, your soil is your most steadfast partner, an asset worthy of investing in. Since 1972, Ohio Earth Food has been the go-to source for the highest performing and most cost-effective granular and liquid fertilizers, seed starting soils, foliar sprays, and disease and insect controls, all approved for use on organic farms. They deliver them right to your farm, too. Don't count on luck this year. Start your seeds in their Plant Pro and the Seed Catapult potting soils, and put their ReVita fertilizers in your soil before you plant, and rest assured that your plants will have all the nutrients, stimulants, and energy for whatever comes their way. These natural blends utilize compost, kelp, and humate, and are low salt index safe for high tunnels. Feed your soils and let your soil feed the plants. Visit them at ohioearthfood.com, now with branches in Ohio and Wisconsin. OhioEarthFood.com. All right, back to the show.
So I want to talk a little bit more about the actual production on the farm, how you handle bed flips, stuff like that. So you said you're on the base block, 60 by 100, correct? For production. And then how are you handling your bed flips, especially, let's say from like a salad green crop to the next, are you tarping that? 14, how do you handle that?
Yeah. So like, let's say we're flipping a bed of lettuce mix. We would flail mow it with the BCS. We try to do everything in blocks. So, yeah, I'm pretty diligent about the crop planning. So we'll have like a whole block that's just lettuce mix and spinach in regular successions. So we'll have that the silage tarp down, and we'll move that over after we flail mow it. And so that tarp kind of just migrates throughout the plot as we are growing and terminating beds. We leave that tarp on for about a week, and then we'll pull that off, rake away any debris, and direct seed right into that again. Sometimes if it's like not a good seed bed, we might add a teeny bit like layer of compost and then rake that in to get a little bit of a nicer seed bed. But generally we try to just direct seed right into that bed.
Okay, cool. And make sure I understand correctly. So you have that 60 by 100 block, and then as you, let's say 2 or 3 beds are used up, you then tarp just those 2 or 3 beds and move the tarp across the block.
Correct. Yeah, we do it in 3 bed blocks kind of within that larger 15 bed block. And so then that tarp just moves as we are terminating old beds.
Okay, cool. That makes total sense. Thank you for clarifying that. And then with that, you're 2 years into it. When you first got there, how did you do your initial ground break and push into production? Was it an open field before you got there? And how do you manage that?
Yeah, so it was an open field. Kind of poor quality soil. It hadn't been sprayed or anything, which was nice. It had been in pasture. It had been, in hay production. So it had been getting cut twice a year, and that all those nutrients were getting exported off the farm. So it was pretty nutrient deficient ground, but hadn't been sprayed. So we tarped it for about 6 months from like the August before we started up until the spring, and tried to knock back those perennials. And then after that, I rotary plowed it with the BCS. And then we did permanent raised compost beds on top of that. And yeah, haven't tilled those beds since. And then we've been opening up subsequent plots. Generally in that method, sometimes I'm currently opening up a new plot that's in peas and oats right now with no compost application. And those will winter kill. And then we'll add our beds on top of that after things open back up in the spring.
Okay, cool. So you're using some of the green manures as a way to open plots up as well.
Yeah, just to choke back the weeds and add a little bit of biological activity into those plots before getting started.
Okay, cool. So if you're doing this cover cropping, are you doing this by the 15 or the 15 block at a time? Is that how you do it, or are you doing in between beds as well?
Sorry, are you saying?
Yeah, I should answer that question. So when you're cover cropping, do you cover crop the entire 15 block, the entire thing at a time? Is that how you look at it?
No, actually, we'll do it on a slightly smaller scale sometimes, like maybe only half of the plot is available within the window to be able to get a cover crop established before it gets too cold. And we'll totally go ahead and do that because we think it's worth kind of squeezing cover crops in wherever is possible. For things like winter rye, though, oftentimes there's a little bit more of a flexibility because we can get those in up to Thanksgiving and still have them established. But with peas and oats, you really want to get them established here like mid-September. So if we have any open beds, we'll try to get them in.
Okay, and try to get them ready to go for the winter. Okay, that makes total sense. And you were saying that, you're after you pull the tarp back and put down a little compost, or you put that initial compost down, you build the blocks out. Do you have a good source there locally? Do you make it your own? How do you produce that?
Yeah, so we do have a local supplier of compost here. We actually have a couple. I haven't been super happy with the quality locally. They're doing their best, but there is, quite a bit of plastic in there. They're getting municipal yard waste. So people leave plastic bags that get chopped up in there. So something I've been pretty passionate about recently is actually making as much of our own compost on farm as possible. We actually have a Facebook group here called Buy Nothing Carbondale. And I posted on there basically asking for any bagged leaves this fall. And I drove around and picked up probably about 200 bags of leaves and then added a bunch of grass clippings from our farm and then like local manures and stuff. And I've made roughly 30 to 40 yards of compost, which isn't quite enough for us to like meet our needs for the year, but it's a good start and something we're passionate about kind of increasing in the future if we can.
Totally. Yeah. You have a little more control over what you're producing. Are you using did you use a tractor bucket to flip that?
Yeah. So we have a 35 horsepower Coyote tractor. Yep. So we put those in kind of big windrows and then kind of push them over and rebuild the windrow to turn them. We turn them like every week for about a month and then just kind of let them sit after that. And we might do one or two more turns, but more spaced out.
Okay.
And it's cool. It really gets me going to see like a hot compost pile get going and you're seeing all the like the biological activity in there. Yeah, something cool about using like kind of waste streams locally and closing that loop and building some fertility on farm. It feels really good.
Yeah. And not only feel good, I feel it's a level of like assurance of like, okay, at the end of the day, I can get some leaves and some manure and make some fertility on our farm if we need to.
Totally. Yeah. And there's something cool. Like there's even like a relational aspect. Like I've met some other farmers that way who are like, getting rid of some manure, or people in the community get excited that their leaves are like going to a local farm and are going to grow some vegetables instead of getting sent to wherever the city sends them. So it feels good. I like having the control over it and the community building aspect of it. Feels like aligned with our mission.
Yeah, it makes total sense. So on site, you mentioned earlier, build out infrastructure, getting things established. Are you producing your own transplants on site? Do you buy those in? Do you have a seedling infrastructure?
Yeah, so we have 3 Farmer's Friend Caterpillar tunnels. 2 of those are for in-ground production. Those are 100 footers. And then we have one that's 50 feet. And we've divided that in half. We've put up a plastic wall in the middle of that. Half of that's for seedling production. So we have like pallet tables and that's heated. And then the back half of that is for storage because we don't really have a barn structure. So we're trying to really bootstrap the space and make efficient use of any infrastructure we do have. But yeah, we produce all of our own seedlings. That's something I really enjoy. That's like one of my favorite times of the year is that early spring when the greenhouse is full of seedlings. And I don't have any plans to bring in starts anytime soon because that's something I just really enjoy about the process.
Yeah, I feel like the early spring, late winter, you're in there, nice warm space, all the life. It feels really good.
Yeah, you're like dreaming about the year ahead. It's like, it feels like there's so much potential all put into one little space. And, that's all about to go populate the whole farm. So
that's fantastic. And besides the classic, transplant crops, are you doing heavily direct seeding for the greens, or are those transplanted cut from again like head salad mix types, Salanovas?
Yeah, so we do a little bit of both. We do a lot of lettuce head production, but then all of our green successions are direct seeded. For us, labor seems to be kind of in short supply. So I'd rather like have a bed be like, a week behind or 2 weeks behind by direct seeding it. That's fine. We have a ton of space out here. We're not space limited. It's more of a labor constraint. So anything we can direct seed, we do.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but just it's so much easier standing up, pushing the seeder. So much easier on the body than transplanting. Even with a paper pot, a huge block like that is still a lot of labor.
Yeah, and I mean you got to think about all the labor that goes into seeding that, and watering it and caring for it in the greenhouse too. It gets touched a lot more times. So if there's things that we can direct seed, I like to do that as much as possible.
Okay, cool. And so you said that you have 2 farmer friends for in-ground production. Are those mainly for summer extension of tomatoes and hot crops? Is it for protection on the edges for greens? How are you mainly using your tunnels?
We really like to maximize the space as much as possible. So actually here in about a week, I'll be seeding both tunnels to carrots. And then come April and early May, we'll be pulling out just the middle row of each bed of carrots. And then while those tomato transplants and cucumber transplants are still small, we'll put those in the middle. And then we'll continue to pull those carrots out as we go. And it works out pretty well. Like by the time the tomatoes are getting big and need a little bit more space, those carrots are coming out. And actually, I think in our first year, the carrots like paid for the tunnel. It's just a really profitable crop for us at our farmers market. And then everything else is kind of gravy. So, and then once the summer crops are done, we put in winter greens. So like spinaches, different lettuces, kale, chard, and really try to maximize that space.
Okay. In your climate, do you get heavy seasonal rains in the summer as well? You said earlier it's pretty hot and humid there.
Yeah, actually, the drainage and heavy rain has actually been probably our biggest obstacle the last 2 years. Like we can routinely get 4 to 6 inches of rain in a single event and just totally flood out our place. We have a pretty heavy clay top layer. So, surface water can stand there for quite a while. So that's something I've really been dealing with, is like trying to figure out how to drain things more effectively, how to orient beds properly. We're actually going to be adding one French drain in a pretty problematic area for us. But yeah, we do get lots of rain at one time. And I actually rarely have to irrigate other than to get things established. Just with the compost and all the mulching we do, our soil holds a lot of water. So,
do you find that having that solid compost layer or heavy organic matter on top of that clay helps with the drainage and helps keep the plants a little bit breathing a little more, or is it holds a lot of water on there negatively?
Yeah, I think it's actually gotten better over the last couple of years as those layers have kind of naturally started to mix a bit more. I think having just one clay layer and a compost layer on top was actually maybe not the best. I kind of wish I had maybe integrated them a little bit more to start, but I was trying to keep that weed seed bank covered. So it was a little bit of a give and take. I found that our production really took off like in June when things started to dry out that first year. Yeah, so I would say it probably holds a little bit too much water just in our certain location, in our particular location. But it's getting better as that becomes more mixed in.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because my very first farm had the same issue. It was clay, then compost on top. And for the longest time, I was just piling compost on top of the clay, and it didn't fix the issue. It really did. It did. Not until we forked it and got it kind of integrated a little bit, completely fixed it. But yeah, that initial, like pulling back the broad fork and just seeing that distinct layer, you're like, I don't think that's great.
No. Yeah, if I were to do it again, I would definitely mix it first and then maybe add a small layer of compost on top. But yeah, I think drainage is maybe more important than weed management on our particular location. Yeah, if you don't have good drainage, you're not going to have crops to protect from weeds anyway. So
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, drainage is really the foundation of the property, but it's one of those things that takes so much work and just like being on the land to see what actually needs to be moved and drained, and it takes a lot of energy.
Yeah, that's something I'd recommend to folks if they're checking out a property to buy for a farm. I went in August in the middle of a drought, and you don't really get to see how water moves on the property and what different plots are going to look like in different seasons. So if at all possible, I mean, going back on, Google Earth imagery or asking neighbors where the low spots are, or if they've seen flooding, that can save you a lot of heartache. Luckily, we have a lot of high ground too. Just one of the plots is a little bit lower. So been dealing with that.
Yeah, well, at least you have a few nice spots that you're, not everything's underwater. That's fantastic. So the water is something you're combating, humidity. Are there any major pests there you're dealing with in that hot climate? I'm assuming you deal with aphids with the greens production. Maybe you don't.
Yeah, so we do deal with a lot of pests here. We'll have like aphid pressure on our greens. We have a lot of kind of larger pests, harlequin beetles for brassicas. We get these blister beetles, which will just like mow down spinach or chard. Let's see. We get hornworms, kind of like your classic pests. We deal with that in a couple different ways. We're trying not to do any sprays, even if they're organic. We don't believe in poison on the farm as much as possible. So we're doing a lot of like preventative measures. So for things like squash or brassicas, we'll transplant them or seed them and immediately cover them with insect netting or agribon. And then we'll pull that off, if they need, once they have flowers and they need to be pollinated or whatever. And then we plan for succession. So we just kind of plan that the bugs will win eventually. And we hope to have another crop in the queue that's protected and ready to go. And also just by having such a diverse array of crops, like if something goes down, there's other things that kind of, they'll do well and they'll fill that place. So kind of spreads out the risk and spreads out the heartache a little bit.
Yeah. Kind of have a little backup by having so much diversity is so smart. You were saying the blister beetles, we don't have those really here. So do they eat green crops?
Yeah, they're scary. They'll eat almost anything, but locally there's like different types of beetles. So there's a striped blister beetle, which is our primary pest, but there are like black ones and some other ones as well. They seem to like spinach when it's under stress, like mid-June, when it's starting to get a little too hot for spinach. they'll start attacking that. But then as soon as they get a foothold, they're going to go after other things. So they'll go after chard, they'll go after potatoes, peppers, tomatoes. But they have certain crops they really like more, and they'll just completely decimate a bed. So you have to be on top of it. We try to terminate that crop as quickly as possible when they get in there, or we'll hand pick them off, but they'll give you a blister, so you have to wear gloves.
That's insane. Okay, wow. So that's a pretty broad spectrum of a pest that hits a lot of different crop types.
Yeah, they're kind of scary. We're still trying to figure out how to deal with them. They're typical in hay bales, so it's more of a problem for kind of horse farms. And they can be pretty problematic if a horse eats them. It'll mess with their insides a little bit. And there's not really a good spray solution or anything for them that I know of. So that's one we're still dealing with and still trying to figure out how to best handle.
Yeah. It's always that journey to figure out, to react to those pests as they move in. But you said it earlier, just having that diversity of crop selection just really helps a little bit in fighting up against that, especially with pests, weather, etc.
Yeah. And, I tended to, especially in the first year, I would get worried about not having enough of a selection for CSA sometimes. But without fail, it's always worked out that we have more than enough. There's always a bounty. Something's always doing well if something else is going down. So I've kind of learned to just trust in, do what you can, worry about what you can, take the action. But then at some point, you kind of just have to let things shake out as they do. And they tend to work out decently well, at least so far. So
yeah. And I feel like those folks who are in a CSA of any customers are the more understanding and on some level are there for the story and the ride of the season. So
yeah. Well, and it's funny, I feel like sometimes I'm really worried about it. And from their perspective, I can tell they're like, this is the best thing ever. There's so much variety and everything looks gorgeous. So they don't see all the hardship sometimes. So to them, it looks like a bountiful table with plenty of options. And they all love it. And I don't think they quite understand some of the stress that goes into having enough food for a CSA. So.
Yeah. They're just thankful to have the food, and they're not. They see the bots there. They don't see the 4 boxes of thrown out greens behind the wall that it took to make that.
Totally. Yeah.
So on site, in order to manage all this production, I'm assuming you have a wash pat space, walk-in coolers as well to manage all this.
Yeah. So kind of fitting into that bootstrap theme, we have a 20-foot shipping container that, I scrubbed and painted and tried to make it look as cute as possible. And then inside of that, we have a walk-in cooler. So just part of that space. So it's 12 by 8 feet, insulated space. And then I built a shed roof off of one side of the shipping container. And under there, we have, an old washing machine turned into a green spinner, got a dunk tank, root washing table, pack tables. And we actually host our CSA pickup under there as well. So we transform that space on Wednesday afternoons and try to make it as cute as possible. And turn it into a nice space for folks to come and grab their produce.
Oh, I like that. That's super cool. That walk-in cooler in there, is that a pre-made cooler you have assembled in there, or did you make your own cooler inside the?
Yeah, we made our own.
Container?
So we framed the walls and insulated it and put the largest 110 AC unit you can get, and then a cool bot, and I did it that way.
Okay, nice. And has that space been enough to store all your production?
8x12 has gotten a little bit tight, especially now that we're adding other wholesale accounts and the leaf orders. It's gotten a little bit tight, but we've been able to manage. And it's a space that I'm constantly cooling. So I'd rather be a little bit limited on space for a couple weeks and not have too much that I'm trying to cool. So we might add another cooler in the future, like in a barn. I'd love to have another cooler at a different temperature for fruiting crops. But right now we're keeping it at 45 and doing mostly greens and things like that in there.
Okay, nice. Yeah, having that walk-in cooler space is just it's so important. You got to have it. So you were saying earlier that you're in year 3 or you're heading into season 3. You're 2 years in. What are some of your goals? Financially or even just individually as you head into this 3rd season? What would really help you grow your business a little more?
Yeah. So actually going into this year, I'm excited. This is the first year I'll be taking an owner salary. So we've been profitable depending on how you look at it the first 2 years, but I wanted to reinvest into the business. So buying, more tunnels, we bought a tractor, that kind of thing. But going into this year, I want to start being able to pay myself, not nearly, it'd probably be like $2 an hour if you calculated it out, but pay myself something. And eventually going into year 4 and 5, I'd like to make this like a reasonable wage for myself and for my employees. There's definitely demand for our product. And I think I think that's possible. I think it's possible to make a decent wage here, market gardening. So that's one goal. Another goal, we have a lot of open space left here, and I'm passionate about perennial production, and I want to start implementing some more perennials. So we've planted some apple trees. In the back acreage, I have 7 acres that are completely open, and we're looking to plant chestnuts spaced 40 feet apart with pawpaws at each node in between. So just kind of planning for the future, having some production that'll provide income to the farm in like 20 years. Maybe when the back's hurting a little bit from doing vegetables for that long.
No, I like that though. You have that long-term had investment into the property and into your business. That's a really smart idea.
Yeah. And I think we might be at like the maximum space I want to use for vegetable production. We're like 1.5 acres, 2 acres. And I want to just focus on doing that better. There were some times midsummer where beds are sitting open or we're not getting on top of the weeds in time. So I want to just get better about utilizing the space we have in production better. And I think that's kind of our path towards profitability, actually. It's not to continue to expand space, but just be more efficient with what we've got. And then add other enterprises to the farm as well. We actually have some CSA members who raise broilers for their own household, and they want to turn that into a business. And so they're also going to be grazing or rotationally moving broilers back here next year and adding that to our CSA as an additional add-on. So we're excited about that as well.
Oh, that's super fantastic. Folks will love that.
Yeah, I think so.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, whenever you get a little more protein in there, folks they decided about that more full diet idea.
Yeah, definitely. We'd love to be able to add eggs and mushrooms and some other things to our CSA soon as well. So
it sounds like you have a lot of integration plans coming up in the future.
Yeah, a lot of plans. We'll see what sticks.
Yeah, exactly. Well, is that cool? It sounds like you're really not only growing food, but being almost like an incubator space and pulling more people into the local farm community. You had told me earlier that you're involved with some young farmer training programs as well.
Yeah, so I'm the Farm Beginnings facilitator for a local nonprofit organization based locally here in Illinois called FoodWorks. I'm privileged to be part of this program that's fostered a lot of other young farmers in this region or beginning farmers in this region. I currently have 9 students who, they have some growing experience, or maybe they've raised, some livestock kind of at a homestead scale. But this class kind of creates a space for them to come up with a business plan and think about how they're going to market their product and, really kind of narrow in on those details before they kind of take it to that next level. So that's been really cool. We have a really vibrant community of folks getting into agriculture down here. And it's been a great way to kind of get plugged into the community and kind of give back. I had a lot of mentors give to me, and it's been cool to be able to, share a little bit of that knowledge to the next set of folks coming through.
Okay. And are all those growers located roughly in your same regional area?
Yeah. So we have 23 counties that we serve in the southern region of Illinois. So it's, within an hour and a half, 2 hours, but generally in our region. Okay,
cool. And are those predominantly vegetable producers that kind of align with what you're doing?
No, we run the whole gamut. We have folks doing like small batch ice cream with all local materials and like some fun, like, kind of weird flavors like lemongrass ice cream or, whatever. We have folks doing herb production. We have cottage food producers doing different ferments and krauts. We have folks interested in livestock, and then we do have some vegetable producers as well. But it's cool to run that full gamut of folks doing, different agricultural enterprises.
Yeah, and I bet just talking to all different producers like that is very enlightening to yourself. And it sounds like you're really trying to grow the CSA into a more of a full diet. Just having those connections and meeting people has probably been super helpful for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it gives me ideas. And frankly, I learn a lot from the students as well, because they all have, wealth of knowledge, from their own backgrounds and experiences as well. So it's a cool collaborative space to kind of bounce ideas off of each other and just for all of us to grow. Again, this movement is, we all benefit, I think, when we share ideas and when we collaborate. So I think this is a nice space for for new farmers to do that.
Totally. And I don't know about you, but I feel like any type of grower, food producer, you just accumulate such a wealth of knowledge. And if you don't share that with some other people, it just goes away with you. It just dies off.
Yeah, I guess like we wear a lot of hats as farmers, and there's a lot of knowledge that maybe we don't think of as knowledge, like bookkeeping or electrical and plumbing or setting up plots or whatever. We wear a lot of hats. We have a lot of knowledge to share with each other, and so I think that's an important part of this class for sure. I
totally agree, and I think that's part of the reason why we do the podcast. We want to share the information, which is great, but you also got to go locally and find the people who are in your region who are doing things you can bounce ideas off of and really learn from.
Yeah, totally.
It's funny. I've got an old farmer by me, and I call him every spring. And he says, "Hey, here's what the weather's going to be." And I asked him, "So how do you know?" He's like, "Well, I've got 3 even older timer farmers that I talk to." So they just relay information, and I get there. And honestly, what he tells me is it's always pretty accurate. It's usually somewhere, within what he says. And it's like, well, yeah, these old timers have been here for 50, 60 years, grown up your generations. They understand what's going on.
Yeah, like you can read a lot of things in a book, but there's something to that hyper local knowledge that's just so important. And it really adds like kind of texture to the experience too, to get really like tuned into your place and tuned into the community around farming in your area. So. Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
That's super great. How long have you been working for with that organization?
I just started there this past year. So this is my first cohort of students. I've worked in the nonprofit space before around agriculture, but really excited to get plugged in with this organization and really believe in the mission. They do a lot of other cool things as well. They host a winter farmers market, mobile market, and a lot of agricultural advocacy work. So they're doing a lot of great work in this region.
Oh, wow. So it sounds like a fun journey with them. And you probably learn a ton.
Absolutely.
So we're going to wrap up the show with a final question. And what we want to know is, how do you find balance in working on the farm and taking care of yourself and your family? Because it's a hard thing to do. How do you do it on a daily basis and still stay sane?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's kind of been a journey. The first year I was pretty poor with that, and it caught up with me pretty quick. I think what I've been focusing on is like saying yes to fun things, even if it feels overwhelmed, like if you're overwhelmed with work at the time. Go out on the lake with your friends for a day. Go to that wedding in the summer when you should probably be on the farm weeding or harvesting or something. But say yes to life, because I don't think life stops for our business. And I think it's important to like continue those things that, feed your soul.
I agree with you, because how many of us in those first few years say, okay, I'm giving it all to the farm, but then giving it all becomes like the running for 30 years and you haven't gone to the weddings, you haven't had the fun.
Totally. Yeah. And I think there's something to we give so much to our soil. We give so much to providing clean produce to all these people in our community. But if we're not giving to ourselves, or like the farm isn't also caretaking us in some way, the farm's not going to be around that long to continue that mission. So I think it's really important that, maybe the farm pays you, and that, that you're taking time for yourself to recover and restore. I think that's so important to the farm's success and to our own happiness as well.
And you said it, but all those customers who realize and love your product and want that product, they want you to be taken care of as well. They want you to be happy and not miserable, growing food for them. So it's it's good on you to take care of yourself and to have some fun when you can.
Yeah. And again, I think it's a journey. I think it's something I'll probably always be working at. I'm sure all farmers are constantly in that push-pull, but something to keep in mind, especially in the height of the growing season when things get crazy. So,
no, I really appreciate that. And I appreciate taking time out of your schedule to sit down and talk with me about your farm, about your experiences. If folks want to learn more about you and your project, what you're doing, how can they learn more from that?
Yeah, so they can either find us on Instagram. We also have a website, beetrootfarm.com. Feel free to check out what we're doing there. I have a blog space there where I occasionally write, maybe once or twice a year. But feel free to check those out and keep up with what we're doing.
Okay, Noah, thanks so much. I really appreciate all this.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Okay, have a great day.
You too.
A huge thanks again to Noah for sharing his story with all of us and for giving us a view into his farming operation. During the interview, the value of mentorship and connecting with those in your local farm community can be seen in the direct positive results it's had for Noah and his farm. At the end of the day, you can never go wrong when you invest in your own education and connecting with those in your local farm community. If you want to learn more about Beetroot Farm, you can follow them on Instagram. Thank you all so much for listening, and have a great day.
All right, we hope you enjoyed that episode. Always make sure to check the links in the show notes for how to follow our guests and hosts. The No-Till Market Garden podcast is a free show that is supported by folks like you who contribute every month over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. That support helps ensure all the shows we do, from the Seed Farmer podcast to the Winter Growers podcast, the Collaborative Farming podcast, the Composter podcast, Growers Daily, and of course, the No-Till Market Garden podcast, can continue to go and grow. You can also find books and hats, as well as an active forum over at no-tillgrowers.com. Huge thank you to editor Michael Sellis and producer Jackson Roulette for all their work on this show and the rest of the team over at no-tillgrowers.com. Otherwise, thank you all for listening, and make sure you are subscribed wherever you're hearing this so you don't miss the next episode of the No-Till Market Garden podcast. See you then.